I didn't mean to stare, but there was something about the way she spoke, not loud, not soft, just steady, that made every other sound in the shop fade out. Even the hum of the soldering gun seemed quieter. It was a small electronics repair shop at the corner of Main and Harbor. Nothing romantic about it. Grease stains, cracked counters, the faint scent of burnt plastic, and instant coffee. I'd been working there for 6 months, fixing things people forgot they even owned. Radios, old watches, the occasional record player. She came in one Tuesday afternoon with a clock. A real one, wood frame, brass hands, the kind that ticked instead of glowed. It stopped working, she said, setting it down gently, like it was something alive. I looked up. She wasn't what I expected, mid-40s, maybe, hair pulled back, but not tight. A single silver line cutting through the dark strands near her temple. She had that kind of face that didn't ask for attention but still held it. Calm, self-assured, maybe a little tired. Battery's fine, she added, crossing her arms, so I guess it's something inside. Her voice carried something. Not warmth, exactly, but control. Like she was used to keeping things steady. I told her I'd take a look. She stayed while I worked. Most customers don't. They drop things off, vanish. But she stood there, watching. I could feel it. Her gaze following my hands, tracing the slow movement of the screwdriver. I tried to focus, but the air changed around her, like the light dimmed just slightly. Do you fix things often? I asked, mostly to fill the silence. She smiled, faintly. Sometimes. Mostly the kind that don't stay fixed. I didn't know what to say to that. Her tone wasn't sad. It was factual, almost dry. But it sat in my chest long after she said it. The clock ticked once when I reconnected a loose wire. She leaned closer, the scent of her perfume. Not floral, something more grounded, like sandalwood, brushing against the smell of machine oil. That's it, she asked. I shrugged. Loose contact. Happens a lot when things get old. She laughed, quiet, almost under her breath. You're not talking about the clock, are you? I looked up, surprised. Her eyes, gray, sharp, were already on me. For a second, neither of us said anything. Just the soft tick-tick of the clock, alive again between us. Then she looked away, breaking the moment with practiced ease. How much do I owe you? I wanted to say nothing, but instead I muttered, it's fine. Just bring coffee next time. She raised an eyebrow. Next time? I didn't know where that came from, but it was out there now, floating in the air like a dare. She seemed amused by it, like she'd heard the same kind of boldness before, from younger voices. I'll think about it, she said, slipping the clock into her bag. But I don't make promises. I watched her leave, the quiet sound of her heels against the floor, the faint click of the doorbell as she stepped into the rain. And just before the door closed, she turned slightly, meeting my eyes one last time. It wasn't long, maybe half a second, but it was enough to make the whole room feel heavier. After she left, I realized the smell of her perfume still lingered, mixed with the coffee, the metal, the static hum of machines. The clock on my counter kept ticking, but every second sounded different now. I kept replaying her words, the way she said I don't make promises, like she was protecting me from something I hadn't even asked for yet. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I found myself hoping she'd come back. Not for the clock, not even for the coffee, but because for the first time in a long while, I wanted to know what it was she didn't promise. She came back 3 weeks later. Same clock, same calmness, except this time she didn't set it down right away. She held it against her chest like she wasn't sure if she wanted it fixed again. It stopped again, she said, a hint of annoyance softening into something else. I think it's telling me to give up. I smiled. Or maybe it just wants attention. She exhaled, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh, and passed it over. I noticed her hands then. No rings. The faintest burn mark on her thumb, probably from cooking. Her nails short, unpainted. There was something honest about them, unpretending. The shop was quieter that afternoon. Rain pressed against the windows, soft but steady. She stood beside my workbench this time, instead of across it, close enough that I could see the small scar just below her wrist. You always fix things this carefully? She asked, watching as I bent over the clock. Only when someone's watching, I said. That earned a low chuckle. Careful. You might start to sound charming. Would that be so bad? Her eyes flicked up to mine, then away again. Depends who's listening. It was the kind of reply that carried more meaning than words aloud. I wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her posture stopped me, a tension around her shoulders, like she was used to keeping things under wraps. I found the problem, a small crack in the spring, almost invisible. You could replace it, I said, but it'll never tick quite the same. She nodded slowly. Maybe that's the point. The rain picked up outside. A passing car hissed through a puddle. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy. It was careful, like we were both afraid to disturb it. You seem tired, I said quietly, before I could stop myself. Her hands froze on the counter. Then she smiled, faint, almost defensive. That obvious? A little. I'm fine, she said. And then, after a pause, I've just been keeping things together. It's what I do. There was something fragile in the way she said it, like she was trying to convince herself. When she reached for the clock, our fingers brushed. Just a second. Skin against skin. But the warmth stayed longer than it should have. She drew back first, clearing her throat. Thank you, she said. Again. You don't have to thank me every time. I know, she said softly, almost like she was talking to herself. But maybe I need to. I handed the clock over. Our eyes met again, not bold this time, just uncertain. The kind of look that asks a question neither of us was ready to answer. As she turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the window, standing there like someone waiting for something he couldn't name. The door closed. The rain softened, and all I could think about was the warmth of her hand, how it had lingered longer than it should have, like a secret that didn't want to stay hidden. It was late when she showed up that time, close to closing, when the neon sign had already flickered out twice and the street outside was nearly empty. She looked different, not in how she dressed, still that same simple sweater, jeans, but in her eyes, like she hadn't slept. I'm sorry, she said, stepping inside before I could answer. I didn't mean to come so late. The clock isn't broken this time. Then why are you here? She hesitated, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Because it's quiet here. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. The rain outside started again, thin, tired drops tapping against the glass. She sat down on the stool near the counter, the one nobody used, and leaned her elbows on her knees. You ever notice, she said, how silence feels different at night? Like it's heavier. Sometimes, I said. Sometimes it's the only thing that feels honest. That made her smile. Not big, just a soft curve, like she wasn't used to being seen that way. I made 2 cups of coffee, mine black, hers with too much sugar, and handed her one. She accepted it like it meant more than it should. I shouldn't be here, she said, staring into the cup. People talk. About what? About everything. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're what, 26? 28. She nodded. That's what I mean. The air between us felt strange, not wrong, not right, just fragile. She kept talking, quietly, about her job, her son in college, the way the house felt too big since her husband left. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. At one point, her voice caught, not from tears, but from holding too much in for too long. She looked down quickly, pretending to adjust the cup. Without thinking, I reached across the counter, just close enough for her to notice, not touch. Her breath hitched. I don't want you to think, she began, then stopped. I don't, I said. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, it felt like something might break open between us. The distance, the unspoken lines, all of it. Then her phone buzzed. A man's name on the screen. She stared at it for a long time before silencing it. Someone waiting? I asked carefully. Not anymore, she said. Her tone was steady, but her hand trembled slightly when she set the phone face down. We sat in silence. The clock on the wall ticked softly, as if marking every second of restraint. When she stood to leave, she hesitated by the door, her coat half on. You make it hard to remember what's sensible, she said. I almost stepped closer. Almost. But I didn't. She met my eyes, a fleeting, vulnerable glance, then opened the door and disappeared into the rain. The wind carried the scent of her perfume back inside, faint and grounding. I stood there a long time, hands still resting on the counter, tracing the heat her presence left behind, and wondering what would have happened if I hadn't stopped myself. She came in on a Wednesday. No clock, no pretense this time. Just the quiet sound of the doorbell and the look in her eyes that said she'd already decided something. I was sitting on the floor behind the counter, fixing an old radio. When I stood up, she was already watching me. "You're closed," she said softly. "I can stay open a little longer." She hesitated, then walked in. The door clicked shut behind her, cutting off the street noise. The shop felt smaller with her in it, like the air had thickened, pressing us closer together even though we weren't touching. She took a seat by the window. No words, just that same tired grace she carried everywhere. I sat across from her, wiping my hands with a rag I didn't need to use. For a while, the only sound was the faint buzz of a streetlight outside. Her eyes wandered around the room. The broken gadgets, the tools, the shelves of half-fixed things. "You fix everything," she said. "Except yourself." The words caught me off guard. "That's not fair." "I know," she whispered. "Neither is this." She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of a chipped coffee mug. There was a tremor in her hands, small but constant. "I shouldn't keep coming here," she said finally. "You know that." I swallowed. "Then why do you?" She laughed under her breath, bitter and sad all at once. "Because when I'm here, I don't have to pretend I'm fine." I wanted to tell her that I understood, that I felt the same, that the hours between her visits felt heavier, quieter. But my mouth wouldn't move. Instead, I said, "You don't owe anyone an explanation." She looked up sharply. "That's not true. We always owe someone something. Our silence, our distance, our restraint." Her words hit deeper than they should have. The rain outside had started again, a steady whisper against the glass. I shifted closer, not enough to touch, but close enough that her perfume reached me again, faint and familiar. She didn't move away. For a long time, we just sat there, the space between us pulsing with everything unsaid. Then she asked, almost to herself, "What are we doing?" I didn't answer right away. My throat tightened, like saying anything would make it real. "I don't know," I said finally. "But it feels like stopping would hurt more than staying lost." Her eyes softened, but her expression didn't. "You're too young to know what that means." "Maybe," I said, "but I know what it feels like." She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her face shifted. The kind of vulnerability people spend years hiding. For a heartbeat, I thought she might reach out. Instead, she stood up, brushing invisible dust off her hands. "Feelings," she said quietly, "don't always need witnesses." She left without another word. And in the silence she left behind, I finally understood what she meant. That sometimes, wanting someone is just another way of being alone, only louder. She didn't come by for almost a month. I told myself it didn't matter, that people drift, that silence doesn't always mean something's wrong. But every time the bell over the door chimed, my head lifted before I could stop it. When she finally appeared, it was on a day that didn't feel like it belonged to either of us. Too bright, too still, the kind of afternoon that makes time feel stretched thin. She looked pale, like she'd been somewhere far away. "You've been gone," I said before I could mask the relief in my voice. "I had things to handle." She placed a folded envelope on the counter. "I thought you might fix this for me." I frowned. "It's paper." She smiled faintly. "I know. Just read it." I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was an old photograph, a younger version of her, maybe in her 30s, standing beside a man in a mechanic's jumpsuit. His arm was around her shoulders. Behind them, a car lifted on a jack, a shop not unlike mine. "That's my husband," she said quietly. "Was." I looked up. "I didn't. It's fine," she said quickly. "He died 12 years ago. Heart attack. I kept that photo in the glove compartment all this time. It fell out last week." I handed it back, but she didn't take it. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said. "Not the way you look. The way you care about small things. The way you try to make things work, even when they're already falling apart." My throat tightened. "That's not exactly comforting." She almost smiled. "It's not meant to be. It's just true." She finally took the photo, holding it gently between her fingers. "When he died, I stopped fixing things. I thought if I let everything stay broken, maybe I wouldn't lose anything else. The words sat heavy between us. I didn't know what to say, not without saying too much. I'm sorry, I said finally, though the words felt inadequate. She looked at me, a long, unreadable stare. Don't be. You didn't do anything wrong. You just made me remember what it felt like to be seen again. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. It was the first time I'd heard her falter. I wanted to reach for her, to bridge the space between us, but something in her eyes stopped me. Not rejection, not fear, just the understanding that this wasn't a moment to touch. Instead, I said softly, "What do you want me to do with the photo?" "Keep it," she said, surprising me. "Maybe it'll remind you that people don't stay, but sometimes the feeling does." She turned to leave before I could answer. When the door closed, I looked down at the photograph again. Her younger smile, the man beside her, the light in both their faces. And for the first time, I felt something shift quietly inside me, like I'd been given a memory that wasn't mine to hold, but one I couldn't let go of either. It happened on an ordinary evening, the kind that doesn't announce itself. The shop was nearly dark except for the orange glow from the desk lamp. I was sorting through old receipts when she appeared in the doorway, umbrella dripping, hair slightly damp. She didn't say hello. She didn't need to. "I shouldn't be here," she said quietly, closing the door behind her. I wiped my hands, nodding toward the stool. "That's what you always say before sitting down." She almost smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I went to his grave today," she said after a pause. "My husband's. First time in years." I froze. Why now? Because I needed to stop feeling guilty for being alive. The words fell between us, fragile, unguarded, raw. I didn't answer. I just listened, because that's all I'd ever really known how to give her, space to speak without being fixed. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, voice low. "He was kind, quiet. He built things with his hands, like you do. And I loved him, but not the way people think love lasts. It changes. It dulls. It hardens. I thought maybe I didn't have it in me anymore." Her eyes flicked up to mine. "And then you showed up, with your broken radios and your stupid, patient kindness." My chest tightened. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't form. She continued, softer now. "You make me remember what still works in me. That's the part that scares me." The rain outside thickened, drumming against the window like a slow heartbeat. "I'm scared too," I said finally. "Because every time you leave, I feel like I'm waiting for something that isn't supposed to happen." We both went quiet. The air felt heavy, but not suffocating, just full. Full of everything that had been building for months. She looked down, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I could see the pulse in her wrist, the faint tremor in her fingers. I reached out slowly, placing my hand over hers. She didn't pull away this time. Her skin was warm, alive, trembling just enough for me to feel it. Neither of us said anything. Words would have ruined it. She shifted closer, not a move of intention, but of exhaustion, of surrender. Our shoulders brushed, the smallest contact, but it felt like gravity finally giving in. For a long while, we just sat there, her breathing shallow, mine uneven, both of us listening to the steady tick of the clock she once brought in broken. Eventually, she rested her head lightly against my shoulder. Not a romantic gesture, not a confession, just a quiet decision to stop pretending there wasn't something real between us. Outside, the rain softened, and somewhere in the distance, a car passed, fading into nothing. She whispered, barely audible, "You fixed it." I looked down at her. "What?" "The clock," she murmured. "And maybe something else." We stayed like that, two people who had run out of reasons to keep their distance, while the clock kept time for us, unbroken. It's been 6 months since the last time she came to the shop. The clock she once brought me sits on a shelf behind the counter now, still ticking, still keeping time with a precision I can't quite match. I wind it every morning. Sometimes, when the shop is quiet, I swear I can hear its rhythm syncing with the pulse in my wrist. I never asked where she went. She didn't know me that, and maybe that's what made it beautiful, the not knowing. We were never a story of beginnings and endings. We were the pause in between. Every so often, I'll catch myself expecting to hear the bell over the door, That soft chime that meant she was there, standing in the doorway with that careful half-smile, pretending she didn't mean to stay as long as she always did. But she doesn't come anymore. And somehow, that feels right. Because what happened between us wasn't about staying. It was about remembering. Before her, I thought connection meant possession, that to care about someone, you had to hold them close, define them, make them yours. But she taught me that sometimes the most honest kind of love is the kind that doesn't demand anything back. The kind that exists quietly, in gestures, in presence, in silence. She once told me, feelings don't always need witnesses. I didn't understand it then. I do now. I see her sometimes, not in person, but in details. In a woman's laugh outside the cafe. In the smell of rain on warm pavement. In the way someone pauses before saying goodbye. She left traces in the ordinary, and that's where I find her now, in things that don't belong to either of us. The last thing she said to me was, "You fixed it." I think she meant the clock, but maybe she didn't. Maybe she meant the way I stopped waiting for life to start, or the way I began to look at people without trying to repair them. I still keep 2 cups in the cabinet, one black, one chipped at the rim, the way she liked hers. Not as a monument, not as grief, just as proof that something real existed for a while. Right here, between the hum of the machines and the smell of coffee gone cold. Love, I've learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a hand that doesn't pull away, a silence that doesn't demand filling, a memory that lingers without hurting. The clock ticks on, and every time I hear it, I'm reminded that some people don't leave echoes, they leave rhythms. If you've ever had someone like that, someone who stayed with you, even after they left, tell me. I think we all carry one.